أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفرني ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسكم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لما استقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآيته لهم أنا حملنا ذريهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشاء نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولهم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين. وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين. وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أن نطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين. ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخسدون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون. ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من أجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون. إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قوم من رب رحيم. وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم وأن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين ونعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم. ولقد أضل منكم جبالا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون يصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناه على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مديرا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمر ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين. أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون. وأتواد من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلمون. أولم يرى الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضربنا لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحيي الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى هو الخلق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول لهم كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي كهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وظل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباكي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تعطئ الرجاء اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توذعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني باسمك راضيا قانئا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤالا. اللهم إني أسألك من اشتدت فوكته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وأذمى فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم أذم سلطانك وأنا مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لكبائه ساطرا ولا لشيء من أملي الكبيه بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي وتجرعت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من كبيه سترته وكم من فاضهم من البلايا قلته وكم من نثار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم أذم بلائي وأفرت بي سوء حالي وكسرت به أعمالي وكادت بي أغلالي وحبسني النفع بود عملي وخدعت الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بخيانتها ومتاني. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء أملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما ابتلعت عليه من صري ولا تؤاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملت في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساعتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترز فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أحوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعد حدودك وخالفت بعد أوامرك فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك. ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك، وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي، معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا، لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني وركة جلدي وضكة عذبي، يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي، حبني لابتغاء كرمك وسالف برك به. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي، أتراك معذبي من نارك بعد توحيدك وبعد ما انتوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك وعتقده ضمير من حبك، وبعد صدق اطرافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت أو تباعد من أدنيت أو تشرد من آويت أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمت. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا وعلى ألسن نتخت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محككا، وعلى ضمائر أحوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارها ساعة الأوطان تعبدك طائعا، وأشارت باستغفارك مذئنا. ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك أنك يا كريم. يا ربي وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاري على أهلها، ألا أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكسور يسير بقاء كثير مدته، فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل الوقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحكير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو، ولما منها أذج وأبكي، لعليم العذاب والشدة أم لطول البلاء ومدته. فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك، وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك، وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك، فكيف أصبر على فراقك؟ وهبني صبرت على حر نارك، فكيف أصبر عن النذر إلى كرامتك؟ أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجاي عفوك؟ فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا، لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيجا آمنين، ولا أصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولا أبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولو نادعنك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين. أفطراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفتك، وذاك تعمى عذابها بمعصيتك، وحبس بين أتباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يذج إليك ذجيجا معمل لرحمتك، ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك، ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك. يا مولاي، فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تونمه النار وهو يعمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يكركه نحيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه ظفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه؟ أم كيف يتكلكل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه؟ أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رب؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في يقته منها وتتركه فيها؟ هيهات، ما ذلك الظن بك، ولا المعروف من فضلك، ولا مشبه لما عملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. فباليقين يقطع لولا ما حاكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كانت لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقام، لكنك تكدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين، وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين، وأنت جل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالأنعام متكرما، أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حاتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل كبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جواره واشدد علي وكنت أنت الركيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أغفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلت أو إحسان فضلت أو بر نشرت أو رزق بسطت أو ذنب تغفر أو خطأ تستر. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك ركي يا من بيده ناصعتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك مأمورا وبخدمتك موصولا وأعمالي عندك مقبولا حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب كوي على خدمتك جواري واشدد على العزيمة جواني وهب لي الجد في خشيته والدوام في الاغتسال بخدمتك حتى أسرع إليك في ميادين السابقين، وأسرع إليك في البارزين، واشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين، وأدنو منك ذنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة الموقنين، واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأعرضه، ومن كادني فكد، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وأخسهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك، وجدني بجودك، وعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك نهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن عجابتك، واكلني أسرتي، واغفر ذلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وذمنت لهم الإجابة، فإليك يا ربي نسبت وجهي، وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي، وبلغني منايا، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي، يا سريع الرضا، اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء، يا من اسمه دواء، وذكره شفاء، وتعته غنى، ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء، وسنه البكاء، يا سابغ النعم، ويا دافع النقام، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام، يا عالما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد، وافعل بما أنت أهله، وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله، وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه. الفاتحة مع الصلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وعجل فرجه.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات. Brothers, sisters, Assalamu alaikum. The family has requested two qasida, one of our Holy Prophet and one of Hazrat Abbas. Inshallah, you guys will be patient with me and recite together with me as well. With the loudest of your voices, Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad salawat. Mustafa jaan hai rahmat pe laakho salam. Mustafa jaan hai rahmat pe laakho salam. Mustafa jaan hai rahmat. Everybody together, please. Mustafa jaan hai rahmat pe laakho salam. Mustafa jaan hai rahmat pe laakho salam. Sham-e baz mein hidayat pe laakho salam. Mustafa jaan-e rahmat pe laakho. ہم غریبوں کے آقا پہ بے حد درود. ہم غریبوں کے آقا پہ بے حد درود. ہم فقیروں کی ثروت پہ لاکھوں سلام. مصطفیٰ جان رحمت پہ لاکھوں سلام. مصطفیٰ جان پہ لاکھوں سلام. اس کی باتوں کی لذت پہ لاکھوں درود. اس کی باتوں کی لذت پہ لاکھوں درود. اس کے خطبے کی ہیبت پہ لاکھوں سلام. مصطفیٰ جان رحمت پہ لاکھوں سلام. مصطفیٰ جان رحمت پہ لاکھوں. مہر چر کے نبوت پہ روشن درود. مہر چر کے نبوت پہ روشن درود. گلے باغے رسالت پہ لاکھوں سلام. مصطفیٰ جان رحمت پہ لاکھوں سلام. مصطفیٰ جان رحمت. عرش تا فرش ہے جس کے زیر نگین. عرش تا فرش ہے جس کے زیر نگین. اس کی قاہر ریاست پہ لاکھوں سلام. مصطفیٰ جان رحمت پہ لاکھوں سلام. مصطفیٰ جان رحمت پہ لاکھوں. محمد وآل محمد صلوات. سہکائے حرم رکھ لے نہ برم. ہم در پہ تمہارے آئے ہیں. سہکائے حرم رکھ لے نہ برم. ہم در پہ تمہارے آئے ہیں. تم بھی نہیں ہم کو ٹھکرانا، تم بھی نہیں ہم کو ٹھکرانا، ہم دنیا کے ٹھکرائے ہیں. ساقائے حرم رکھ لے نہ برم، ہم دری پہ تمہارے آئے ہیں. اب سارے سہارے ٹوٹ چکے، ہمیں اپنے پرائے لوٹ چکے. تم اپنی پناہوں میں لے لو، تم اپنی پناہوں میں لے لو، ہم رن سے بہت گھبرائے ہیں. سہقائے حرم رکھ لے نہ بھرم، ہم دری پہ تمہارے آئے ہیں. عباس عباس یا ابا الفضل العباس. All together please. عباس عباس یا ابا الفضل العباس. اشکوں کی زبان پہچانتے ہو، جو دل میں ہے وہ بھی جانتے ہو. ہم کہہ نہیں سکتے تم سن لو، ہم کہہ نہیں سکتے تم سن لو. بس ہاتھوں کو پھیلائے لائے ہیں. عباس عباس یا ابا الفضل العباس. عباس عباس یا ابا الفضل العباس. مولا تم باب حوائج ہو، روزے پہ انہیں بھی بلوا لو. مولا تم باب حوائج ہو، روزے پہ انہیں بھی بلوا لو. غربت کے سبب جو آ نہ سکے، ہم ان کے عریضے لائے ہیں. عباس عباس یا ابا الفضل العباس. عباس عباس یا ابا الفضل العباس. محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Sayyid Shabbir Kirmani, respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sir Fatah is requested for the Salah Sawab of the marhumin listed on the screen and for all marhumin. Al-Fatiha. Yaman Yujibu is requested for the names listed on the screen and for all those in need here and elsewhere. Let us recite together. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه يكشف السوء 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 اللهم صل على محمد. Ayyam Fatimiyya. We are honored to have Maulana Sayyid Muhammad Zaki Bakri as our guest speaker for the upcoming Fatimiyya program. The program will take place on January 5th, 6th, and 7th, which is Wednesday to Friday, based on moon sighting. Please review the schedule for program timings. There will be niyaz served on the Wafat night. Wafat Abi Fatima alayhi salam. On Saturday, January 8th at 3 p.m., the ladies will commemorate the Wafat of Abi Fatima alayhi salam. The program will include A'mal of Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam, and the lecture will be by Sister Shakira Kirmani. All ladies are invited to attend. Khums Ijaza. We wish to inform you that we continue to have official authorization to collect khums dues to be used fully towards the running and maintenance of Masjid Hayy. You may fulfill your obligated religious dues by generously supporting Masjid Hayy. More details are listed on the screen. At this time, I would like to invite Sayyid Shabbir Kirmani to come recite tonight's Majlis with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فوض أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ونعم المولى ونعم النصير. والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل. وقل رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتاب الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هن لباس لكم وأنتم لباس لهن. صدق الله العلي العظيم. زينوا مجالسكم بالصلوات على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. My respected elders, brothers and sisters in Iman here in Florida, across the globe, wherever you're hearing my voice, Salamun alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Question: what is the key to a successful marriage? Or what are the keys to successful marriages? Keep those questions in the back of your mind. When we come to our modern world, you'll find throughout times, throughout history, in the last 100 years, last 200 years, last 300 years, and beyond. In fact, if you go back millennia, you will find that there was an institution that has been sacred. In every major religion of the world, whether that is Judaism, whether that is Christianity, whether that is in Islam, you will find that is the institution of marriage. That is two individuals coming together, marrying, forming a bond, and actually leading and building a family, having offspring, and building the institutions. And we came forward and we realized that society is made up of these bricks, which one may call families. And every major religion has held it sacred. You will find, for example, if you go to the world religions, you will find, for example, in Judaism, for example, you will find in Christianity, and you will find the famous lines where people say, till death do us part. Or for example, you will find in Hinduism where it's not even limited to just one lifetime. The argument is that the marriage or the marital bond is of 7 lifetimes. In Islam, we also hold marriage sacred, perhaps not to the extent of 7 lifetimes, but it is something that is part of the worship or the ibadah of a believer. That is to say that when 2 individuals form a bond of marriage, their life and that act that they have conducted is not separated from their religious obligations. That means that this is an act of worship. If we understand this from that lens, this can perhaps solve many of the challenges that we are faced in our world today. Therefore, in the brief moments that we have together, I want to look at a few things. I want to look at, for marriage is a time for all of us to reflect and consider some things. What things? For example, those who are already married, those who intend on getting married, those who are in the process of getting married right now. What are the things that they should consider? What are the things that they should have in the back of their mind? For those who, for example, are having a wonderful marriage, may Allah bless your marriages, may they even get even better. For those, for example, who are having some turbulence, what are some things that can help you try to smoothen the air, so to speak? And for those who are about to embark on this journey, what is it that they can adopt in their lives so that the road ahead will be smooth as possible, based on the teachings of the Quran, based on the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, and based on the teachings of the modern world in which we exist. This is our agenda for the brief moments that we have together. Wherever you are, here in Florida or across the globe, send a salawat on Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli. At the first level, when we come to the major religions of the world, as I've outlined, every major religion has had a ceremony with respect to this sacred event. When we come to Islam, Islam is no exception. And I've recited the verse at the beginning where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that we have made you a libas, is the term that's been used in the Quran. And the term that you've heard very often when it comes to marriage, that is a covering. And we often take the narrative that this covering is to protect the husband or to protect the wife from outside intruders. For example, how they are perceived by others. But at the same time, let's look at a libas, a covering. One aspect of a libas, the clothes that many of you are wearing very decoratively and ornately and beautifully, is to beautify one. And therefore, one aspect of that is we often neglect is within the home, how do we build harmony? Within the household in which we exist, how do we build harmony? Because, my dear brothers and sisters, this is of pivotal importance today. If you know the data that I've shared with you about what's going on in the West at large, oftentimes people say the rate of divorce is increasing. In fact, if you look at the research is quite clear. It's not that the rate of divorce is increasing necessarily. Rather, the rate of marriage itself in America is decreasing. People are not getting married. They're saying that why do we have to put a bond to our marriage? Why do we have to give a name to our union? Why do we have to call each other husband and wife? We can just call each other partners. We can just live and cohabitate. We can live in the same dwelling. And then as long as it works, it works. If it doesn't work, we move on. This has many societal problems because one of the things that this can lead to is problems down the line with the children. Allow me to explain. I will remind you, we live in a world where epigenetics is on the rise. That is, we've known for a long time that your genes make up how you look, your physical nature, for example, your height, your looks, things of this nature. We now know and have known for some time that your genetics actually have an impact on your behavior, how you act. So for example, you may have how you deal with stress, how you deal with anger, how you deal with other factors of life. Children, in the early years of their life, they are very perceptive. There are certain genes that scientists have identified that if these are taken care of or not taken care of, it can have an impact on the child for life. Allow me to explain. MAO alpha. MAO alpha is a known gene, and that gene is correlated with aggression. In fact, it's correlated with these shootings. You saw the shooting in Denver. You've seen the shootings that happened last year and the year before in movie theaters and the likes. These shootings, oftentimes, not always, the people who have a gene called MAO alpha are more inclined, according to Dr. Robert Sapolsky at Stanford University, are more inclined to commit antisocial violence. Now stay with me. If and only if, and this is vital, if and only if they hold that gene and they experience childhood trauma, meaning that childhood trauma activates that within the child's life. And this is one aspect and many others. Why am I saying this? And why am I going off on this tangent, which I don't have the time for? Because it's very important that we make sure the way we speak to our children is one of love and care and compassion, number one. The way that we speak to our spouses in front of our children is also one that must be of love and care and compassion. Allow me to explain. Let's pause here for a moment. If you go to Washington, D.C., and I invite you all to go, you will go to the different places there. For example, you'll find the Library of Congress, which is the largest library in the world. Alongside these different places to visit in Washington, D.C., you will find there the Supreme Court of the United States, the highest court in the land. When you go there, you will find some artwork, some stonework that is etched in the stone. When you go there, you will find some of the greatest lawgivers in the history of humanity, according to the Supreme Court of the United States, etched in stone there. For example, who? For example, Hammurabi and Hammurabi's Code from ancient Mesopotamia, number one. For example, Moses and the Ten Commandments, you will find etched in stone. Amongst the stonework, you will find the likes till this day of a man by the name of Muhammad, who is etched in the stone in the Supreme Court of the United States of America. I want you to study this man's life in the truest sense of the word. That is, truly sense and truly study his life. This is my advice for those who are embarking on marriage, those who are currently married, and those who, for example, will get married eventually, inshallah. Study that man in its truest sense. Why? Because he was a trailblazer par excellence. I tell you, the likes of George Bernard Shaw, the founder of the London School of Economics, he says, I have studied the man, referring to Rasulullah, and he says, far from being the Antichrist, he must be hailed as the savior of humanity. George Bernard Shaw, the founder of the London School of Economics, says, look, I believe, his words, not mine, if Muhammad were to take over the dictatorship of Europe, he would solve all of Europe problems, European problems, all of them. He's saying this 150 years ago. Now stop here. What did he do? He did one thing above everything else. These people who until yesterday, the Quran says, وَإِذَا الْمَوْعُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنبٍ قُتِلَتْ, that the infant girl will cry on the day of judgment and say, my Lord, what did I do wrong? For what sin was I buried into the ground alive? That's what they were doing before Rasulullah. But what was it that led Michael H. Hart, the astrophysicist and author, to put a list of the 100 most influential people in history, and the top 5 people on the list, according to Michael H. Hart, were who? He says number 5 on the list, I'm doing it in reverse order, 5, Confucius. Number 4, Buddha. Number 3, Jesus Christ. Number 2 on the list, he puts Isaac Newton. And number 1 on the list, he puts Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. But when asked why Michael H. Hart, he says, my decision to put Muhammad as number 1 on the list may surprise many, but he said, I can't do anything. He says, because every single person on this list other than Muhammad, they did one of 2 things. They either brought a complete social system, a secular system, or they brought a religious, spiritual system. Either spiritual or social or secular. One of these 2. No one brought both. Confucius brought a spiritual system. Buddha brought a spiritual system. Jesus brought a spiritual system. Newton, although he wrote as much about monotheism, Newton was a muwahhid. He's known for his scientific contributions. But he said Muhammad's the only person on this list who brought a complete spiritual religion, and he brought a complete socio-economic system. No one else did. What did he do? He changed the way that these people thought. He raised their level of thinking. That yesterday they were committing infanticide. They were killing their daughters. And the next day they were conquering the world, so to speak. What did he do? I'll give you one example. This messenger of God would be sitting in a packed masjid, and he would be on the mimbar. And in this mimbar, in an environment where everyone is perhaps trying to assert their power, their manliness, their ego perhaps, he'd be giving a sermon, and he'd stop the sermon in his tracks with hundreds of people watching. Why? Because some emergency has happened? No, at least not apparently. Because 2 little boys were climbing the mimbar, named Hassan and Hussein, his grandchildren. He would stop his sermon, pick them up, hug them, and kiss them on the face. In a time and an era where it was unprecedented for a man to kiss his child. He said, look, Why do you not show affection to your children? Why do you not show love to them? Why do you not show compassion? That paradigm didn't exist before Rasulullah. Stop here. This same messenger, in an unprecedented era, in an unprecedented time, he says to the people who are in front of him, he says, look, I want you to know that a man who says, I love you to his wife will find that this statement will never leave her heart. This is not Hollywood, this is not Bollywood, this is the messenger of God telling men to tell their wives that you love them. You see, we somehow perhaps have drifted away from the teachings of Ali Muhammad, the teachings of Islam, the teachings that were very basic and simple and part of the innate fitrah, to try to assert ourselves in some world that is not one that's going to lead us to happiness necessarily. Study Rasulullah, number one lesson. Number two, we're on the nights of the Ahlul Bayt, in particular Lady Fatima. We're told there's a moment in time where in the entire city, in the entire Hijaz, the Makkah-Medina belt, it is time for the daughter of Rasulullah to get married. Everyone wants to propose, and everyone wants to get married. But there's no one. Until and unless, you know the story, I'm condensing, I don't have time. There comes a moment in time where Jibreel descends to Rasulullah and says, Ya Rasulullah, I have come to inform you through Allah's will that Allah has performed the nikah ceremony of Ali and Fatima in the heavens. And He is inviting that you do this on the land right here on this earth as well. And He's saying that Ali is shy at this moment, for he is not the wealthiest in society. This is for us to understand. Ali is Ali. But a lesson for us to understand, what was the basis of the term that we throw around during marriages, which is kufr? That is, in the riwayat, in the narrations, what you should look for when you want to marry someone is kufr. But this term has often been misused or misunderstood, or perhaps not explained appropriately. And the idea here is to find compatibility. But the basis of compatibility is what? The basis of compatibility is taqwa, first and foremost. That is, are you on the same wavelength? But here's the thing. In our world, in our society, the basis is often something else. It's social status, it's economic status, things of this nature. We sometimes think if someone's God-fearing and believing, the sister or the brother, that sometimes this means that this is in opposition to worldly gains. But if someone has taqwa, especially for a male, if they have taqwa, by virtue of this they are to work hard. By virtue of this they are supposed to have a halal risk and income for the family. By virtue of this term, it's a catch-all term that brings everything under one roof, which we often don't understand. Study number one, Rasulullah. Study number two, Fatima al-Zahra and Amir al-Mu'mineen. Of course, their lives are a lesson for us. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, not once in our relationship, between my relationship with Fatima al-Zahra, did we ever argue at any level and about anything. They were completely on the same wavelength. You may ask how, you may ask when. We're told there's a narration that says that one day Amir al-Mu'mineen came to Fatima al-Zahra and said, my wife, Fatima, it's been years we've been married. You have never once asked me to give you something. You have never asked me to buy you something. You have never asked me for anything. I said, yes, yeah, Abul Hasan, I didn't. And the reason is because when I married you, my father said that, oh Fatima, Ali is of humble means right now. Ali does not have the glitz and glamour. Don't ask him something that he may not be able to provide for you. Understand this. And therefore, I took this to heart and I made sure that I never troubled you or burdened you. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, Fatima, my dear wife, I have a wish, I have a desire that for once in life, you could ask me for something that I can provide for you. Fatima al-Zahra was not well that day. According to the narration, she was under the weather, as we would say. And at that point in time, she says, very well, Ya Abul Hasan, if you want to get me something, then perhaps you can get me a pomegranate. She says, very well. Amir al-Mu'mineen gets excited that finally, for once my wife has asked me for something. He turns around, leaves the house. He meets Miqdad, he meets Qambar. He says, look, Fatima, for once I asked her to ask me for something, she for the first time obliged. For the first time she said, I want something. She wants a pomegranate. They said, we have to get a pomegranate. But this is not the season, it's not the time, what do we do? He said, very well. They went and asked around. Let's ask around in the bazaar. They asked one market, nobody. Second market, no one. Third market, nothing. No response. It's not the season. Until they asked, and the companions asked, they got to a point in time where the narration says that they found one Jewish merchant who was in a far bazaar who had the pomegranates. They raced to the bazaar, the market where he was. They gave their greetings. They said, look, Amir al-Mu'minin says, look, my wife, she's never asked me for anything in life. Today I asked her to ask me for something, and for the first time, she said, can I please have a pomegranate perhaps? And at that point in time, she asked me for that. And we've looked around the whole city and we got to you in order to try to get a pomegranate for my wife. The Jewish merchant says, look, I'm closing up shop for the day. I'm done for the day. I sold everything. I'm done. You know it's not the season. The demand is high. It was gone. He says, is there any solution you can come with? He says, look, I've kept one pomegranate behind the stall, behind my desk, so to speak, behind my shop, in the back. But I kept that for my own wife. Amir al-Mu'minin says, look, you're a merchant of pomegranates. Perhaps you can solve her dilemma another day. Perhaps you can give it to her another day. He says, look, I understand your situation. The Jewish merchant, look at his honesty and integrity. He says, look, I understand the situation. I'll give you this pomegranate. It's 2 dirham. I'll sell it to you. Amir al-Mu'minin says, no, I'm going to give you 4 dirham for this. Look at the integrity and honesty of this Jewish merchant. He says, no, the price is 2 dirham. I'm going to charge you 2 dirham. Principle. At that point in time, Amir al-Mu'minin says, very well. Islamic principles of economics going on here in front of our eyes. Amir al-Mu'minin says, very well. 2 dirham for the pomegranate, thank you very much. Here's 2 additional dirhams as a gift from my wife to you. 4 dirham Amir al-Mu'minin pays for it, he takes the pomegranate. He goes on his way back towards his house. But it's Abu al-Hasan. Remember, Amir al-Mu'minin, Rasulullah says, Ali and me are the fathers of the ummah. Amir al-Mu'minin is the one who looks after the widows, he looks after the orphans, he looks after the poor, he looks after the wayfarers, he looks after everyone. Like they're his own. He's passing by and there's a beggar in the street who's blind. When he sees this beggar, the beggar is calling out, is there anyone who can help me? You and I maybe will say, it's a poor blind man, he won't even see me, he won't even notice, I'll walk the side way. Amir al-Mu'minin can't do that. He says, oh man, what is your need? He says, I'm poor, I'm blind, I'm hungry. Amir al-Mu'minin says, what would you like? He says, I'm craving a pomegranate. Allahu Akbar. Amir al-Mu'minin. Now Amir al-Mu'minin could have done something called tawriya, for example, in Islamic fiqh, which is, you don't lie. If someone says, for example, you remember the night of Hijrat, where they asked, when they pulled the sheet and they asked Ali, where's Rasulullah, where's Muhammad? He said, did you leave him in my custody that I should know where he is? He didn't lie. He gave the exact answer. He could have said, Amir al-Mu'minin, when the man asked for a pomegranate, he said, look, it's not the season of pomegranates. It wouldn't have been a lie. It wasn't. But look at Amir al-Mu'minin. He says, look, Amir al-Mu'minin says, it just so happens that I have a pomegranate right now. He says, but my wife, her whole life, she's never asked me for anything. And today, for the first time, she asked me for something. And I'm taking this pomegranate for her. Perhaps, if it's acceptable to you, we'll split it half. I'll take 1/2 and I'll give it to you, and 1/2 I'll take for my wife. Is that okay with you? He says, very well. The poor blind man says, yes, very well. Amir al-Mu'minin takes the half for the blind man, begins to break the pomegranate and the pieces and the morsels, and he begins to feed the poor man with his hands. These are not fairy tales, these are lessons for you and I. Sometimes for us, even when we do charity, we'd write a check, for example. Look at Abu al-Hasan. He could have just taken the pomegranate, half of it, given it to the poor man, walked his way, and been on his way. He stopped to feed him with his own hands. He fed him. After he fed him, Amir al-Mu'minin says, how was it? Was it good? He says, it was the best thing ever. He says, I wish, the poor blind man says, I just wish that I could have the other half. Abu al-Hasan, Amir al-Mu'minin. That's why the A'imma, the Imams, no one else, the Imams after Imam Ali said, don't call us Amir al-Mu'minin, there's only one Amir al-Mu'minin. At that point in time, he says, very well. Amir al-Mu'minin begins to break the pieces of the pomegranate look at the tawakkul he has in Allah. He gives and he feeds to this poor man. He says, how did you like it? He says, this was the best thing. Amir al-Mu'mineen is empty-handed. He gets up and he proceeds towards his house. Amir al-Mu'mineen, imagine the heart of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He gets to the house. He opens the door. He says, Assalamu alaikum, my dear wife. Wa alaikum assalam. When he opens the door, what does he notice? Fatima al-Zahra is there and she seems bright. She's always bright. She's Zahra, but she's brighter than normal. He says, Fatima, my wife, how are you? How's your health? How is everything? He says, Ya Amir al-Mu'min, Ya Abul Hassan, I'm better than I've ever been before. I'm very well. He said, what happened? What occurred? He says, that I had a pomegranate. Abul Hassan says, you had a pomegranate? How? He says, that messenger that you sent with a crate of pomegranates, I had one of the pomegranates from that crate and I ate it. And it cured me, it healed me, I feel better than ever before. At that point in time, Rasulullah enters, he says, Jibreel just came and told me about Ali's sincerity, and he tells to Fatima al-Zahra. Fatima al-Zahra knows, but he says, Ali, the sincerity of the heart of Ali, he had gone to get you a pomegranate. He searched far and wide, he got the pomegranate, he brought it back. But on the way there was a poor person and he fed him. Allah loved this act of Abul Hassan so much that he gifted you an entire crate of pomegranates from the heavens. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. A principle that sincerity never goes unaccounted for in the books of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You and I need to remember it. But what do we do today, my dear brothers and sisters? Remember this. Insha'Allah, those who are embarking on marriage today, those who have in the past, those who are in the season of marriage, may Allah bless your marriages, insha'Allah. Some things that you want to keep note of. The first few months, insha'Allah, the first few years, is something called the honeymoon period. And I pray that your honeymoon period lasts 6 months, 9 months, years in fact, decades. May Allah grant you that. That everything is lovely. But afterwards, it's very well known and very well documented that after 6 months, 9 months, 1 year, the graph begins to dip a little bit. And those honeymoon phases begin to decline. By the way, this is not only in marriages, this is in work as well. Google, I just was in California a few hours ago. I saw Google, I saw these big hubs in Silicon Valley. Google has done a lot of research on how to keep their employees happy, for example. Because they spend a lot of money on their human resources. So they also found, in a place like Google, in a place where you get free haircuts, they give you free meals, where they're covering everything that you can imagine. Even at a place like Google, they found that after 6 to 9 months, there's a decline in productivity. I'm still on marriage, stay with me. They wanted to know, what can we do, what can we help, how can we solve the problem of the honeymoon effect in employment that leads people to be productive after 6, 9, 10 months. They found one thing, gratitude, gratefulness. They found that if employees spend the first 5 to 10 minutes of the day just jotting down 3 things they are grateful for about this job, their productivity continues well beyond the honeymoon period. Bring that to your marriage. If you start taking your partner, your husband or your wife for granted, and you do not stop to appreciate the beauty that they bring to your life, you will also be susceptible to the negative aspect of the honeymoon effect. Therefore, I invite you every day to count and enumerate, write down 3 things that you love about your spouse, 3 things that you appreciate about your spouse, 3 things that bring great things to your life through your spouse. Do that and you will find, inshallah, your honeymoon period will extend well beyond the 6 to 9 month norm, number 1. Number 2, what are the things that you want to stay away from? And number 3 will be, what are the things that you want to adopt? Keep these in mind in the modern research. What is it that you want to stay away from? Dr. John Gottman has spent his life dedicated in the area in Seattle, looking at and having couples come into his studio, and he asks them, and he actually films them, their interactions. And he says, if you've read, for example, Malcolm Gladwell's books, you'll also know, he says, within 5 minutes, I can assess the viability of a marriage. That is, will it last or not? And he says, I look for 4, what he calls the 4 Horsemen of Doom. We are not here to judge anyone. You know, it's very easy for us to play Monday morning quarterback and come forward and say, look forward, this person did this thing wrong in the marriage of that person. We don't know what happens behind closed doors, number one. Number two, our job as mosques is to help people become the best version of themselves. Our job is not to try to critique them and try to say that this person did this wrong or that wrong. Building on that, there are 4 horsemen of doom, according to Dr. Gottman. What are they? He says, number one, criticism. If he sees these, he knows that this is not on the right track. Stay away from them, young and old alike. Criticism. Criticism is when you start to say that you did this not because you forgot, not because you made a mistake, not because of X or Y or Z. You did this because you were trying to spite me. You did this because you were trying to upset me intentionally. For example, what? For example, you didn't take out the trash because not because you forgot, but because you were trying to upset me. Or for example, you didn't do the dishes, not because you forgot, but because you are actually trying to upset me. Criticism, and you start saying you're bad for this and you're bad for that. That's number one. Criticism, stay away from it, never good. Number two is defensiveness. Now, defensiveness, at some level, you need to communicate why you did what you did. But defensiveness is where you come forward and you start saying everything that I did this because of this and you did that. And what happens here is even if you're right, the other person, according to Dr. Gottman, they hear, I'm right, you're wrong. It undermines them. So you don't want to always be defensive. It leads to problems in marriage, according to Dr. Gottman. Don't always be defensive. Say 1 or 2 times why you did what you did, but don't always try to say, look, I'm right, you're wrong. Don't always be defensive. It's not good for the marriage. Second horseman of doom. Number 3, stonewalling. Stonewalling is we're not going to talk about it. End of story, end of discussion. You've seen the Indian movies? Gadiya, bas, Gadiya. That's stonewalling. Don't do that. It's not good for your marriage. At any dynamic. Stay away from stonewalling. And the 4th element of the dynamic of what he says is the worst is contempt. Contempt is the worst of the horsemen. And he says that is when you make personal attacks at your spouse. From there, he says there's no returning. That's the worst that happens. You start saying that you're incompetent. You're silly, you're not intelligent. You start making personal attacks and you start devaluing the human being. Remember one thing, my dear brothers and sisters, young and old alike. I deal with a lot of this from coast to coast and across the pond. We have established a culture in our communities where we have come forward and said that we are marrying husband and wife. On what basis? Oftentimes, and I'm just sharing with you my honest experience, that we have created marriages that on paper look perfect. They look wonderful. The husband's a doctor, the wife's a doctor, husband's a lawyer, wife's a lawyer, husband's a successful entrepreneur, wife's a successful entrepreneur, X, Y, and Z. It looks perfect on paper. But when you actually apply it in the realm of reality, it's not working. Because we think that a degree, for example, has a life in and of itself, or a credential, or letters behind a name have some credential. But we sometimes forget, on the other side is another human being. My dear brothers and sisters, if you want the keys to success in life and in marriage, never forget that that person on the other side of the table, your spouse, is also a human being. Regardless of how many credentials they have, or how many credentials they do not have. Regardless of how big their bank balance is or is not, don't make the basis of your marriage's externalities, because those won't last. If recessions of 2007, 2009, recessions that are coming up, recessions that have happened in the past have shown the graphs of wealth go up and down very quickly. So when everything's gone, perhaps, what will you rely back on? What will you fall back on? That's where it's important to remember. 4 things to stay away from. So what do you adopt? Dr. Gottman says, look, number 1, look at your spouse with rose-colored glasses. Rose-colored glasses meaning what? You have heard the old adage, love is a little kind and a little blind. Don't always try to find nitpicking and problems. Try to be a little bit more compassionate, number 1. Number 2, kindness and generosity. These are the antidote to the 4 horsemen, according to Dr. Gottman. Whenever it comes to an issue, choose kindness with your spouse and choose generosity. Generosity doesn't always have to be financial. Generosity can also be through your time. Generosity can also be through your words. Generosity can also be through your touch, on the shoulder, on the hand. Generosity can be in a variety of ways, your actions. Be generous. Especially for us men, we think, for example, 2 roses are better than 1. For the sister, they may find that just the thought of 1 rose is going a long way. And the next level, the 5 languages of love, Gary Chapman, which many of you, I hope you recall my lecture that I gave at Ayam Fatimiyya last year on this issue. It's vital to know that everyone has a different approach. And these are in Islamic framework. Allow me a few minutes on this very quickly and succinctly, because this may change lives or help lives. Dr. Gary Chapman says, look, we have tanks. You know, we have a fuel tank, you have a petrol tank. You go to the fuel pump, prices are higher than normal these days. Everyone has a different need. Different cars have different needs. Some have 87, 89, 91 fuel grades. Similarly, human beings, we're not all the same, and it's very important in the early days of the marriage for the spouses to understand what is the language of affection, what is the language of love on the other side. It could be, for one person, it could be touch. For one person, it could be words. For one person, it could be actions. For someone else, it could be gift giving. For others, it could be time. These are the 5 languages, according to Gary Chapman. Now you may say, what's the basis of this from Islamic framework? You are often told, according to the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt, there is a narration from the 5th Imam, from Imam Baqir, where he says that if you are angry and you are standing, sit down. And if you are sitting, lay down. You've heard this. But the second part is often not mentioned. And the second part of the narration from Imam Baqir says very clearly, and it says that if you are angry with a loved one, touch them. Perhaps after they calm down, not right away. Touch them on their hand, touch them on their shoulder, because that will bring the hearts closer and that will extinguish the flames. With your loved ones, with your family members, touch them. Touch has an impact. That's someone's language. Some people need that. They don't need the other ones. For other people, for example, it's words of affection. A study conducted at Arizona State University that I often mention in my research is what? They asked people, how many of you appreciate your spouse when they do chores around the house, when they look after their kids, when they do X, Y, and Z? How many of you appreciate them? They all said, we appreciate them. Then the next question was, how many of you actually tell your spouse you appreciate them? Nobody said it. Nobody explained it. No one expressed that they appreciated them. How is that person supposed to know? Are they a prophet? Is Jibreel going to come? Express it. Number 2, use your words. Imam al-Kadhim says, when you have affection towards someone and your heart has affection towards a brother in Islam, make sure you tell them, because that brings the hearts nearer. We often don't express our love and our commitment and our compassion and our care for others. Imam al-Kadhim says, tell people. Touch, words, actions. And this is perhaps one of the most interesting ones, where Dr. Chapman says, he says, look, there's a lady who came into his office and she said, look, my husband, I keep telling him, fix the fan, fix the fan, fix the fan. He doesn't fix the fan. Dr. Chapman asked a few questions. He said, now I know his language. Now I know his style. Now I know what fills his tank. He says, for the next 3 weeks, go back, don't mention the fan. Just if he does something, genuinely, sincerely appreciate it. That's it. Very well. 3 weeks later, she came back into the office. Dr. Chapman says, what happened? He fixed the fan. Fix the fan? So yeah, you didn't understand his wavelength. You didn't understand his language. Now that you did, you appreciated him genuinely and sincerely, he will move heaven and earth for you. You want to think this is non-Islamic? Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba is in i'tiqaf in the masjid. When he's in the masjid in i'tiqaf, the narration says, a man comes to Imam Hassan in the masjid in i'tiqaf, you're not supposed to leave. He says, Yabna Rasulullah, I'm in a big loan, and the person who I owe money to, he's called the loan back. He's called the loan back. He says, Imam Hassan says, at this moment in time, I don't have the money for you. Obviously, he was in the masjid, he wouldn't have the money with him at that time. And the people are saying, you don't see Imam in i'tiqaf, you're bothering him, troubling him in this state. He says, look, hold on. Okay. Yabna Rasulullah, perhaps you don't have the money on you right now. Perhaps, fair enough, I believe you. But, perhaps you can use your word as the grandson of Rasulullah and get me some more time. You can buy me some more time. As soon as he said this, the narration says Imam Hassan got up and he went towards the door. He went and he grabbed his shoes. The companions were all lined up watching. They said, Yabna Rasulillah, you are leaving a state of i'tiqaf? Imam Hassan, while he's leaving the masjid, looks back at them and says, I've heard from my father who heard from my grandfather that the one who helps a believer in need does more than 1,000 nights of ibadah. We sometimes have not understood the essence of what the Ahlul Bayt were about. So that is for a foreigner or someone who you don't even know, who's a stranger. Imagine to do actions and to help your spouse, your husband or your wife. How much ajr, how much sawab must be within that. At the next level, gift giving, and this is vital, which Chapman mentions. As us, for men, we often think that the dollar amount matters extensively, or that something that is $100 is better than something that is $50, for example. Whereas Chapman says, women often don't think in this way. Just the thought of getting a gift, even if it's small, shows that you care. And for some people, that is their language of love. That is their language of affection. I don't have time to tell you how much emphasis Islam has put on gift giving. Giving other people gifts, small or big, doesn't matter. The fact that you give people gifts in Islam is highly encouraged. The final thing, time. And by the way, this is not only between spouses, this is also between children also. Parent and child relations. For some people, time is the most important thing that they value. Their tank of love, their tank of appreciation fills up when you give them time. And perhaps that is the element that we are most strapped for. That is the thing that we have the least time for in our world today. Give time. Give the best hour. Give your best hour to your family. Give your best hour to your spouse. You may say, where am I getting this? Jeff Bezos. You know Jeff Bezos, Amazon? He's usually 1 or 2 richest in the world. Now maybe he's 3 at the moment. He gives his best hour, perhaps before divorce, I don't know, to his children. The first 8 to 9 hours, he is with the 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., he is with his children. At 10 a.m., he starts to make decisions. That's the best time to actually do hardcore decision making, and mathematics, in fact, is the best time. I'm concluding everything. There's a lot to say. But just remember, make your houses harmonious. Make your lives harmonious, because that has an impact on children if it's not harmonious. Don't, at the first sign of distress, try to abandon ship. Build love, build affection, build care. And inshallah, you will have livelihood and you have liveliness within your families and your household, as did the Ahlul Bayt, even when they perhaps did not have the most wealth in society. A few lines of poetry, because it is a milad in honor of the Ahlul Bayt. Otherwise the conclusion would not be fully complete. In honor of the Ahlul Bayt, the poet says in honor of Rasulullah, Mere khayal ko nisbat hui Madine se, Mere khayal ko nisbat hui Madine se, Mehak gulab ki aane lagi pasine se. मेरे ख्याल को निस्बत हुई मदीने से, महक गुलाब की आने लगी पसीने से. दुरूद भेजे मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद पर हम सब. मौला अली की शान में, बिना हुई जो चश्म तो नूरे खुदा कहा, उक़दा खुला तो अक्ल ने मुश्किल कुशा कहा, मकसद हुआ वसूल तो हाजत रवा कहा, पाया दुरे मुराद तो बहरे सखा कहा. अनीस, पाया दुरे मुराद तो बहरे सखा कहा. हम खुश हुए कि मधु के दरिया बहा दिए, हम खुश हुए कि मधु के दरिया बहा दिए. क्या बढ़ गया जो बहर में कतरे मिला दिए. हम खुश हुए कि मधु के दरिया बहा दिए, क्या बढ़ गया जो बहर में कतरे मिला दिए. और कहाँ मैं और कहाँ मदहो सनाए फातिमा जहरा सलामुल्लाह अलैहा. वाकई में कहाँ मैं और कहाँ मदहो सनाए फातिमा जहरा सलामुल्लाह अलैहा. जो कुछ कह दूं तो ये भी है अताए फातिमा जहरा सलामुल्लाह अलैहा. फातिमा, सारे शरीके बज़्मे किसा थे महाज पर, सारे शरीके बज़्मे किसा थे महाज पर. था हुक्म किबरिया का तकाजा मुबाहिला, और वो तो निसाउकुम के लिए आ गई बतूल, वरना तो जीत सकती थी फिजा मुबाहिला. वो तो निसाउकुम के लिए आ गई बतूल, वरना तो जीत सकती थी फिजा मुबाहिला. और दुरूद भेजे मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद पर. आखिरी शेर. रुतबे में हो नजी तो वही शान चाहिए, अब नूह को नजात का सामान चाहिए. कश्ती हो बादबां हो निगेबान चाहिए, कश्ती के तैरने को भी तूफान चाहिए. लेकिन ये मौजिजा है शह मशरिक़ैन का, खुश्की पे तैरता है सफीना हुसैन का. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless this gathering. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless the newly married, inshallah, those who will be married. May Allah bless them. May Allah bless their household. May Allah allow them to have a beautiful journey that they are embarking on, and all those who are getting married, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reduce and alleviate those who are suffering financially, those who are suffering from COVID or otherwise. There's a surge in the Omicron variant. Please be careful, inshallah. May Allah protect us all from this, and may Allah hasten the reappearance of Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman and allow us to be amongst his companions when he returns. Surah Al-Mubarak Al-Fatiha ma'as salawat. Allahumma salli.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Sayyid Shabbir Kirmani, respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, has said, there is no institution more beloved to God than the institution of marriage. On this auspicious Thursday night, we are pleased to announce the wedding of Sister Suman Zahra, daughter of Dr. Suhail and Batul Ali, to Brother Raza Zain, son of Aslam and Talat Tanweer. On behalf of the entire Orlando community, we wish to extend our heartfelt congratulations to the Ali and Tanweer families and pray for the well-being and success as Brother Raza Zain and Sister Suman Zahra begin their journey as a newlywed couple. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I would like to now invite Dr. Suhail to say a few words. Please give him a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. It is customary after any wedding or shadi related function for a family member to come up and thank the people that have graced the occasion. Tonight, I felt I had to do it myself, and it would be inappropriate for me to delegate anybody else for this. Let me first start by thanking the volunteers. They always do a tremendous job, but when they sign up to be volunteers here, they do not sign up to be volunteers for private occasions. And they have gone over and above the call of duty to accommodate us and have been really very helpful and gracious. Thank you so much. I would like to thank the reciters as well. Ammar Sharif, thank you so much. Brother Imran Kareem, he has always been there for us whenever we needed him. Jazakallah. Riaz Manji, thank you for the beautiful recitation. Sayyid Shabbir Kirmani, thank you so much for the enlightening lecture and the delightful poetry. Always appreciate that. And after me, I'm going to have a couple of other people that are coming up. Ali Raza Karmali, who I've known since he was a small kid, and alhamdulillah recites very, very well. And inshallah he will follow me. And then Ziyarat-e-Warisa will be recited by Ali Jawad and his dad, Mustafa Parpia. And Mustafa Parpia is also my snooker partner and my snooker coach. Thank you so much for not beating up on me for the last couple of weeks, because we've not played for the last couple of weeks. And generally, when we come over here, we say thank you to the audience, of course, But in the back of your mind, you always have that this is my family, these are my friends, these are people I've known for 20 years. They should be here. Of course, I expect them to be here. Not tonight. Not with the kind of situation. Tonight, everybody that is here has taken at least a little bit of risk coming here. And the fact that they thought that this risk was acceptable, I am humbled. Thank you so much, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah.
وصلى على محمد وآل محمد. نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے، نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے، کیا حسین ہے، نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے۔ خدا کے دین کا نا خدا، خدا کے دین کا نا خدا، ہر ابتدا کے ابتدا، خدا کے دین کا نا خدا، ہر ابتدا کے ابتدا، کرم کے انتہا حسین ہے، کیا حسین ہے، نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے۔ کرے جو کوئی ہم سری کسی کے کیا مجال ہے، جہاں میں ہے لحاظ سے حسین بے مثال ہے۔ یہ ہو چکا ہے فیصلہ، یہ ہو چکا ہے فیصلہ، نہ کوئی دوسرا خدا، یہ ہو چکا ہے فیصلہ، نہ کوئی دوسرا خدا، نہ کوئی دوسرا حسین ہے، کیا حسین ہے، نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے۔ کرو گے گھر مخالفت غم حسین کی یہاں، وہ حشر ہو یا حشر میں کہ الرسی جو علماء، جہاں بھی چھپ نہ جاؤں گے، جہاں بھی چھپ نہ جاؤں گے، کہیں بھی پچ نہ پاؤں گے، جہاں بھی چھپ نہ جاؤں گے، کہیں بھی پچ نہ پاؤں گے، کہ ہر جگہ میرا حسین ہے، کیا حسین ہے، نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے۔ قضا کے بعد پھر مجھے نئی حیات مل گئی، فشار سے عذاب سے مجھے نجات مل گئی، قضا کے بعد پھر مجھے نئی حیات مل گئی، فشار سے عذاب سے مجھے نجات مل گئی. سوال جب کہ آ گیا, سوال جب کہ آ گیا, ہے کون تیرا رہنما. سوال جب کہ آ گیا, سوال جب کہ آ گیا, ہے کون تیرا رہنما. تو میں نے کہہ دیا حسین ہے, کیا حسین ہے, نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے. ہدایت حسین پر عمل کرو حسینیوں, رہیں گے ہم بہشت میں, یقین رکھو حسینیوں. ہدایت حسین پر عمل کرو حسینیوں, رہیں گے ہم بہشت میں, یقین رکھو حسینیوں. قبول ہوں گے ہر دعا, قبول ہوں گے ہر دعا, کسی سے کیوں درے بلا. قبول ہوں گے ہر دعا, کسی سے کیوں درے بلا. ہمارا واسطہ حسین ہے, کیا حسین ہے, نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے. خدا کے دین کا نا خدا, خدا کے دین کا نا خدا, ہر ابتدا کے ابتدا, کرم کے انتہا حسین ہے. کیا حسین ہے, نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے. کیا حسین ہے, نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے. صلی علی محمد و آل محمد.
توجہ زیارت. بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. السلام علیک یا وارث آدم صفوت اللہ. السلام علیک یا وارث نوح نبی اللہ. السلام علیک یا وارث ابراہیم خلیل اللہ. السلام علیک یا وارث موسیٰ کلیم اللہ. السلام علیک یا وارث عیسیٰ روح اللہ. السلام علیک یا وارث محمد حبیب اللہ. السلام علیک یا وارث امیر المؤمنین علیہ السلام. السلام علیک یا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام علیک یا ابن علی المرتضى. السلام علیک یا ابن فاطمة الزہراء. السلام علیک یا ابن خدیجة الکبریٰ. السلام علیک یا ثار اللہ وابن ثارہ والوتر الموتور. اشہد انک قد اقمت الصلاة وآتیت الزکاة وامرت بالمعروف ونہیت عن المنکر وأطعت اللہ ورسولہ حتی أتاک الیقین فلعن الله أمة كتلتك، ولعن الله أمة زلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بزولك فرزيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها، فلم تلبسك من مضلحمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين، وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الحادي المهدي، وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبإيابكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. بأبي أنت وأمي يا ابن رسول الله، بأبي أنت وأمي يا أبا عبد الله، لقد عظمت الرذية وجلت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل السماوات والأرض. فلعن الله أمة أسرجت وألجمت وتهيأت لقتالك. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، قصدت حرمك وأعطيت إلى مشهدك. أسأل الله بالشأن الذي لك عندك وبالمحل الذي لك لديه أن يصلي على محمد وآل محمد، وأن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة كتلتك، ولعن الله أمة زلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بزولك فرزيت به. السلام عليك يا ولي الله وابن وليه، لقد عظمت المصيبة وجلت الرذية بك علينا وعلى جميع المسلمين. فلعن الله أمة كتلت وعبره إلى الله وإليك منهم. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحباءه، السلام عليكم يا أصفياء الله وأوداءه، السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدتي نساء العالمين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الناصح، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله بأبي أنتم وأمي تبتم وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم.
Ziyarat of Hazrat Abbas. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alayka ya Abul Fadl al-Abbas ibn Amir al-Mu'mineen. Assalamu alayka ya ibn Sayyid al-Wasiyyin. Assalamu alayka ya ibn Awwal al-Qawm Islam wa aqdamihim imana wa aqwamihim bidin Allah وأحوتهم على الإسلام. أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك فنعم الأخ المواسي. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة استحلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام. فنعم الصابر المجاهد المحامي الناس والأخ الدافع عن أخيه المجيب إلى طاعة ربه الراغب فيما زهد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل. فألحقك الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا عبد الله الحسين وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذريتك علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن أجل الله فرجه وسهل الله مخرجه وظهوره. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقادا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.